The drums thundered like heartbeats across the riverside village. Dancers whirled in bright cloth, their feet pounding the earth in celebration. Tonight was no ordinary feast. Obiyajalu, the village's wealthiest son, was marrying Adana, daughter of the most respected family in 3 kingdoms. Tables overflowed with roasted goat, jollof rice, and palm wine. Gold cloth draped every pillar. Children ran between guests, laughing. Mothers whispered about the bride's beauty. Fathers nodded at the groom's success. Then the music stopped. A ragged old man stumbled into the courtyard, leaning on a crooked staff. His clothes hung in tatters. Dirt streaked his face. He smelled of dust and something ancient, something forgotten. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mothers pulled children close. Young men stepped back. The old man's eyes, clouded and tired, swept across the gathering. But when those eyes found Obiyajulu, they stopped. The groom froze. His smile vanished. His hand trembled on his cup, spilling palm wine onto his fine shoes. Adana turned to her husband-to-be. Obiyajulu, what is wrong? He couldn't answer. Terror had stolen his voice. The old man simply stared, silent as stone. "Remove him!" Obiyajulu shouted, his voice cracking like broken wood. "Guards, get this disgrace out of my ceremony!" 2 muscled men rushed forward, their hands reaching for the old man's arms. But the stranger didn't resist. He simply stood there, staff planted in the ground, watching Obiyajulu with those strangely familiar eyes. Adana's hand flew to her chest. "Obiyajulu, who is this man?" "No one," he repeated, but the word came out weak, desperate. "The village is full of them." Chief Nwosu placed a heavy hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Adana, your husband is right. We cannot let this disturbance ruin our family's name. People are watching." Her mother nodded eagerly. Yes. Think of what they will say. That we allowed riffraff into our celebration. That we have no standards." But Adana pulled away from them, staring at the old man. Something in his eyes called to her, not with words, but with a sadness so deep it seemed bottomless. The seer tapped her staff 3 times against the ground. The sound echoed like a warning drum. To drive away a stranger during a blessing ceremony is to drive away the spirits themselves. Grave consequences follow such actions. The crowd murmured, some nodded in agreement, others shifted uncomfortably. The old man lifted his hand slowly. His voice was barely a whisper, but it reached every ear. "I ask for nothing, only a place to sit, to watch the blessings, not for food, not for drink, only to witness what joy has bloomed here." His words were simple, but they carried something in them, something that made Adana's heart ache without knowing why. A guest leaned toward another, whispering behind his hand. "That voice, I have heard it before, long ago when this village was different." Obiyajulu's face turned pale as chalk. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the evening coolness. "He is no one," he shouted, louder than necessary. "A mad wanderer, nothing more." But his hands shook, his breath came too fast, and everyone saw it. The old man bowed his head slightly, as if accepting judgment. But before he could speak again, the seer raised her staff and pointed it directly at Obiyajulu's chest. "The ancestors are watching, and they see more than we do." Adana turned to her fiancé, confusion clouding her beautiful face. "Obiyajulu, tell me the truth. Who is this man?" "No one," he repeated, but the word came out weak, desperate. "A madman. The village is full of them." Chief Nuosu placed a heavy hand on his daughter's shoulder. Adana, your husband is right. We cannot let this disturbance ruin our family's name. People are watching. Her mother nodded eagerly. Yes, yes. Think of what they will say. That we allowed riffraff into our celebration. That we have no standards. But Adana pulled away from them, staring at the old man. Something in his eyes called to her, not with words, but with a sadness so deep it seemed bottomless. The seer tapped her staff 3 times against the ground. The sound echoed like a warning drum. To drive away a stranger during a blessing ceremony, she said, her blind eyes somehow seeing everything, is to drive away the spirits themselves. Grave consequences follow such actions. The crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. The old man lifted his head slowly. His voice was barely a whisper, but it reached every ear. Test their hearts. Let truth show what gold cannot buy. Obiajanu's jaw clenched. He could feel hundreds of eyes pressing on him, judging, questioning. He had worked too hard, climbed too far, to let this ruin everything. Fine, he spat. Let the old fool watch, but not among my guests. He pointed to the far corner of the courtyard, behind the musicians and dancers. Sit there, in the shadows where you belong. Laughter rippled through some guests. A few young men snickered behind their hands. The old man said nothing. He simply bowed his head and shuffled toward the corner, his staff tapping softly against stone. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, watched him with wide eyes. As he passed, she reached into her wrapper and pulled out a piece of fried plantain. She held it out to him, her small hand trembling. Here, sir, you must be hungry. Before the old man could take it, the girl's mother yanked her back violently. The plantain fell to the ground. Don't touch that filth, she hissed, dragging her daughter away. The old man bent slowly, painfully, and picked up the fallen food. He wiped the dust off gently and placed it on a nearby stone. The seer, watching from across the courtyard, smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who has seen this story before and knows how it ends. The seer raised her staff, her blind eyes turning toward the crowd. Let me tell you a story, she began, her voice carrying like smoke over water. A parable, if you will, of a boy and his father. The guests quieted. When the seer spoke, even the proud listened. Long ago, there was a boy born into poverty. His father was a simple farmer, a man with calloused hands and a broken back. Every day, this father worked from sunrise to sunset. He sold his goats. He sold his land. He went hungry so his son could eat. He wore rags so his son could have shoes. The guests were silent now. Even the children had stopped playing. The seer paused, tilting her head toward Obiajalu. And what happened to that boy when he grew rich? The old man, sitting in the shadows, wiped a single tear from his dusty cheek. The old man, sitting in the shadows, wiped a single tear from his dusty cheek. The seer's voice grew heavier. The boy left the village. He swore never to return until he was worthy, until he could hold his head high, until shame no longer clung to his name. Obiajalu's breathing quickened. His hands curled into fists. Years passed, the seer said. The father waited. He grew old, his back bent further, his eyes dimmed. But he waited, because that is what fathers do. A woman in the crowd wiped her eyes. A man cleared his throat roughly. Then one day, the seer continued, the boy returned, but not as a son, as a stranger, with fine clothes and a new name, and a past he had buried like bones in the forest. He walked past his father's house without looking. He built a mansion on the other side of the village, and when people asked about his family, he said they were dead. Gasps erupted. Guests turned to look at Obiajulu, their faces shifting from admiration to suspicion. The seer turned her milky eyes directly toward the groom. The boy forgot who paved his way, who bled so he could rise. The old man in the corner touched his chest as if the words had struck him like stones. Adana's voice was barely a whisper. Obiajulu, your parents. He wouldn't look at her. Couldn't. Adana pulled away from the celebration, her mind spinning. She found her parents near the wine table, laughing with other chiefs. Her father's voice was loud, boastful. Yes, yes, we are blessed. A son-in-law with such wealth and status, and no troublesome in-laws to worry about. Her mother giggled. Indeed, clean background, no embarrassing relatives showing up at festivals. Adana's stomach turned. Father, do you know Obiajulu's family? Chief Nuosu waved his hand dismissively. What does it matter? The man has proven himself. That is enough. But enough, Adana. Her mother's voice was sharp. Do you know how many girls wanted him, and he chose you? Don't ruin this with foolish questions. Adana turned away, her eyes searching for the old man in the shadows. He was watching her now, his gaze soft and sad. As she moved toward him, his voice floated to her ears, though his lips barely moved. Child, do not bind yourself to a tree whose roots you have not seen. She froze. Her skin prickled with cold despite the warm night. How do you know my name? The old man simply bowed his head, but Adana saw it clearly now. Something was very, very wrong. The courtyard erupted into argument. Some guests defended Obiajulu, pointing to his success and generosity. Others whispered about the seer's story, wondering if the parable was really about their host. Throw the beggar out, someone shouted. He is cursing the ceremony. No, another called back. We cannot disrespect an elder. It brings misfortune. Chief Nuusu's face reddened with anger. This is disgraceful. Our daughter's engagement is being ruined by gossip and superstition. Adana's mother clutched her husband's arm. People are staring. They're judging us. Do something. But before anyone could act, a sudden gust of wind swept through the courtyard. It came from nowhere, cold and fierce, snuffing out half the ceremonial candles in an instant. Women screamed. Men grabbed their caps before they flew away. The dancers stopped mid-step. The musicians' hands froze over their drums. And in that eerie silence, the seer's voice rang clear and cold. The ancestors are not pleased. Her staff struck the ground 3 times. Each strike felt like a judgment. The old man lifted his eyes to the darkened sky, and for just a moment, lightning flickered in the distance. Silent, watching, waiting. The seer moved slowly across the courtyard, her staff tapping, her blind eyes somehow seeing everything the crowd could not. She approached the old man and knelt beside him, her ancient joints creaking.
Her weathered hand reached out and touched the tattered cloth of his rags. The moment her fingers made contact, she gasped, a sharp, sudden intake of breath that made everyone freeze. "This cloth," she whispered, loud enough for all to hear. "This is not ordinary fabric." The crowd pressed closer, straining to see. The seer's fingers trembled as they traced the ragged edges. "This comes from the sacred grove, the shrine of the ancestors. This cloth is used only in spiritual rites." She lifted her face toward the old man, though she could not see him. "It is blessed, enchanted, meant to reveal the truth of men's hearts." A heavy silence fell over the gathering. Even the night birds stopped singing. The seer's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried like thunder. "Who gave you this garment?" The old man's voice was quiet, but steady. "One who knows the hearts of men. One who sees what gold cannot buy and pride cannot hide." Chief Nowusu scoffed. "Nonsense! Superstitious nonsense!" But his voice cracked at the edges, and Adana noticed something she had never seen before. Her father was afraid. Adana moved away from the crowd, needing air, needing space to think. She found herself near the entrance to the compound, where her parents stood with their closest friends, drinks in hand. Her father's voice drifted to her ears, thick with wine and arrogance. "We made it very clear to Obiajulu, we will not tolerate any embarrassment. No poor relatives crawling out of the bushes looking for handouts." One of his friends laughed. Wise, wise. People who come from nothing always drag their families down with them." Adana's mother joined in, her voice cruel with wine. "Can you imagine sitting at our table, eating our food, dressed in rags? No, no, we have standards." Anger flared hot in her chest. These were the people who raised her. These were the values they taught her. And suddenly, they sickened her. A soft voice spoke behind her, making her jump. She turned. The old man stood there, just beyond the torchlight, his eyes reflecting something ancient and knowing. "Now you see," he said. "See what?" she whispered. "The hearts of those who smile while the sun shines, and turn away when clouds gather." Adana's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know why, but in that moment, she understood that everything she thought was solid was actually sand. The seer's voice cut through the night like a blade. "Obiajulu, son of this village." She turned her blind eyes toward him. "I ask you now, before all these witnesses, where is your father?" The courtyard went silent. Every eye turned to the groom. Obiajulu's throat worked, but no sound came out at first. Finally, he managed, He died years ago, when I was still a boy." The lie hung in the air, visible to everyone like smoke. The old man in the shadows flinched as if struck. His hand pressed against his chest over his heart, and his eyes closed in pain so deep it seemed to age him another decade. "Died," the seer repeated slowly. "You are certain?" "Yes." Obiajulu's voice was firmer now, convincing himself as much as others. "He died. I mourned him. I moved on." The seer tilted her head, listening to something beyond hearing. Then she spoke words that landed like stones in water, creating ripples that would never stop. "Did he die, Obiajulu? Or did you bury him while he still drew breath? Did you bury him in shame, in silence, in the grave you dug with your own pride?" Gasps erupted. Adana's hand flew to her mouth. Obiajulu stumbled backward, his face twisting with rage and terror. "You know nothing, old woman, nothing." But the old man whispered, so soft only those closest could hear, "Obi Nuami, my son, my son." And then he spoke a nickname only a father would know, Ajulu Nuami. The seer raised her staff, commanding silence. "Let me tell you another story, a true story this time." No one moved. The night held its breath. There was a father who loved his son more than his own life. This father worked until his hands bled. He sold everything he owned, his goats, his land, even the roof over his head. He went days without food so his son could eat 3 times daily at school. The crowd listened, transfixed. This father grew thin as a reed. His neighbors mocked him, called him foolish, but he didn't care. His son was brilliant. His son would escape the poverty that had changed their family for generations. Tears rolled down several faces in the crowd now. The son went to the city. He studied. He worked. He became successful beyond dreams. And then the seer paused, letting the silence stretch. Then he sent one letter, one single letter, that said, "Do not look for me. I have a new life now. Forget the old one. Forget me." Adana turned to Obiajulu, horror downing on her face. "No, tell me she's lying." But Obiajulu couldn't speak. His lips moved soundlessly. The old man whispered from the shadows, his voice breaking, "Obiemwami, Obiemwami, my child, my child." And then he spoke a nickname only a father would know, Ajulunwami. Adana's hands trembled. She stepped away from Obiajulu and walked directly to the old man. The crowd parted for her, watching in stunned silence. She knelt before him, looking into those tired, familiar eyes. "Sir," she said gently, "would you like hunger? Would you like a seat at our table?" The old man's eyes filled with tears. "You have a pure heart, child. May it never be hardened by the world." Adana turned to Obiajulu, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "I ask you, as your future wife, to show this man mercy. Offer him food, a seat of honor, kindness." The entire courtyard watched. This was the test. This was the moment that would define everything. Obiajulu's face twisted. Shame, pride, fear, all warred within him. I cannot. People will talk. They will think." "I don't care what they think," Adana interrupted, her voice rising. "I care what is right." "No." Obiajulu's voice was hard now, final. "I will not be embarrassed. Not tonight. Not on the day I am supposed to shine." Adana stared at him as if seeing a stranger. The man she thought she knew
Vanished, replaced by someone small and hollow. She stood slowly, stepped back, away from him. Then, she whispered, "I am marrying a man I do not know, and I am not sure I want to." The whispers exploded into open talk. Guests no longer bothered to lower their voices. How can he treat an elder this way? Such cruelty, and on his own engagement day. I have heard stories about him, that he forgot where he came from. Chief Nwasu's face reddened with fury and embarrassment. "Silence, all of you. This is a private family matter." But the tide had turned. Respect was draining away like water through cupped hands.
An old farmer, weathered and grey, stood up. I knew Obiajulu when he was a boy. I knew his father, a good man, a kind man. He suffered for that boy. He pointed at Obiajulu. And this is how you honor him? Obiajulu's temper erupted. You know nothing, nothing! His voice cracked with desperation. That man, he pointed at the figure in shadows, is nothing to me. Do you hear? Nothing! The words echoed across the courtyard, final and damning. And then the old man, who had remained silent through it all, collapsed to his knees. His staff clattered to the ground, his head bowed so low, his forehead nearly touched the earth. A sob escaped him, just one, but it carried more pain than 1,000 screams, and Adana, watching, felt something break inside her chest. The old man lifted his head slowly. His eyes, though tired and wet with tears, held a strange clarity now, a purpose. He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his staff. When he spoke, his voice was no longer weak. It was steady, ancient, filled with something beyond human understanding. He said softly, I came only to bless, not to expose, not to shame, only to see with my own eyes what had grown from the seeds I planted. He moved toward Adana, his steps slow but deliberate. She didn't move away. Something told her not to fear him. He reached out and touched Adana's forehead with 2 fingers. Your heart is pure. May the ancestors protect it. Then he turned to Obiajulu. The groom tried to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. The old man touched Obiajulu's sleeve. Just a brief, gentle touch. Yours is afraid. It beats like a trapped bird. It knows what it has done. Guests leaned forward, barely breathing, and then the old man began to sing. Softly, a lullaby, one meant only for a child loved beyond measure. Obim, obim, nuam omalicha, ura kainaru, kaimechegi. My heart, my beautiful child, when you sleep, I watch over you. Obiajulu's face crumbled. That song, he knew that song. Only one person had ever sung it to him. Gasps filled the courtyard. Obiajulu stumbled backward, his hands flying to his head. Memories crashed over him like waves, too many, too fast, too painful. His father's hands, rough and scarred, tying his uniform. His father's voice, tired but proud, saying, You will be great, my son, greater than I ever was. His father's face growing thinner each time Obiajulu came home from school because the old man had been skipping meals to pay school fees. And then the final memory, the one he had tried to bury deepest. The day he left for the city for the last time, his father, already sick, trying to follow him to the bus station. Obiajulu walking faster, pretending not to hear the calls behind him. Wait, Obi, wait. I want to bless your journey. But Obiajulu had not waited. He had climbed onto that bus and never looked back. Now, standing in his fine clothes, surrounded by his fine things and his fine guests, Obiajulu's voice came out as a broken whisper. It cannot be you. You should not be alive. The old man's eyes held infinite sadness, should not be, or did you hope I was not? Obiajulu's knees buckled. He fell onto the stone ground, his expensive agbada pooling around him like the rags his father wore. And the question hung in the air. Why had he thought his father dead? The seer spoke again, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. The ancestors demand truth. Let the past speak. And suddenly, Obiajulu was speaking, not because he wanted to, but because the words poured out like poison finally released. It was 7 years ago. He began, his voice hollow. I had finished my studies. I had a job offer in Lagos, a real chance, but father was sick, weak. He could barely walk. Tears streaked down his face, mixing with shame. He begged to come with me, said he could find work, said he just wanted to be near me, but His voice broke. I told him no. I told him the city was no place for old men, that he would be a burden. Adana's hand covered her mouth, horror widening her eyes. He followed me anyway, walked for miles, even though his body was failing. I found him collapsed on the road outside the village, and Obiajulu couldn't continue. Sobs choked him. The old man finished for him, his voice gentle, despite the pain. You left me there. You told me I would send for help, but you never did. You boarded your bus, and you left your father lying in the dust like a dog. The crowd gasped, some crying openly now. I thought you would die there, and I hated myself, but I was too afraid to go back, too ashamed.
The old man's voice was soft but clear. I did not die, my son. Obiajulu lifted his tear-stained face. A good woman found me, a healer from the forest. She nursed me back to life, slowly, painfully. For months, I was more dead than alive, but I survived. The courtyard was silent as death itself. When I could walk again, the old man continued, I returned to the village. I heard stories of you, how you had become successful, how you had money, now, respect. I was proud, even then. His voice grew heavier. I came to your house, this very compound, newly built. You were here, entertaining guests. I stood at the gate, watching through the fence. You were laughing, drinking, showing off your wealth. Obiajulu closed his eyes in agony. I called your name. You looked up, saw me, and in your eyes I saw not joy, not relief, but fear, shame. You turned away and told your gods there was a madman at the gate. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. So I left, the old man said quietly. I disappeared. I decided my son could rise higher without the wake of a poor father dragging him down. But I never stopped watching. I have seen you return to this village many times. Each time, I hoped you would ask about me, search for me, but you never did. The seer turned toward Chief Nwosu and his wife, her blind eyes somehow pinning them in place. And you, the bride's parents, what is your part in this tragedy? Chief Nwosu puffed up his chest. We have done nothing wrong. We simply advised our future son-in-law to hide his father, the seer interrupted coldly. To bury his past like it was something rotten. Adana turned to her parents, betrayal burning in her eyes. You knew about his father and you told him to hide it?
Her mother's face twisted with defensive anger. "We were protecting our family name. Do you know what people would say if they knew your husband came from such poverty? That his father was a common laborer?" "A laborer who loved his son more than his own life," the seer shot back, "while you love your reputation more than your own daughter's happiness." Chief Nwosu's face darkened. "Remove this beggar now, Before what?" The seer's voice rose, powerful and terrible. "Before you disgrace yourself further? The ancestors have seen your greed, your pride, your cruelty." She raised her staff high. "The sacred cloth does not lie. It reveals what men hide. And you, chief, you and your wife have been found wanting." The crowd murmured agreement. Some nodded. Others openly glared at the chief and his wife. Their social power was crumbling before their eyes. The old man touched the ragged cloth that covered him. As his fingers brushed the fabric, it began to glow, softly at first, then brighter. A warm golden light that made people shield their eyes. "The secret cloth," the seer whispered. "Its power awakens." The light pulsed like a heartbeat, and then something impossible happened. Every person in the courtyard saw visions, not with their eyes, but in their minds. Memories, truths. Their own acts of kindness and cruelty played before them like stories told by firelight. Chief Nwosu saw himself turning beggars from his gate while food rotted in his storeroom. Adana's mother saw herself mocking a servant girl for her torn dress. Guests saw moments they had forgotten. Small cruelties, casual dismissals, words that cut deeper than they knew. And Obiya Yulu saw it all. Every moment he had chosen pride over love. Every time he had pretended not to hear his father's name. Every lie he had told to erase the man who gave him everything. He collapsed completely now, his body shaking with sobs so violent they seemed to tear him apart from the inside. "Forgive me," he gasped. "Forgive me, Father, please." The light grew brighter still, pure and terrible as truth itself. The villagers began to shout, their voices rising in a desperate chorus. "Who is he? Tell us the truth. We demand to know." The old man stood in the center of the light, and despite his rags, he suddenly seemed taller, stronger, more than just an old beggar. The seer bowed. She who bowed to no one, who commanded respect from chiefs and kings, lowered herself before this ragged stranger. "Speak, Okoro. Speak your true name. Let the village remember what was forgotten." The crowd pressed closer, silent now, waiting. The old man's hands moved to the knot at his throat, the one that held the ragged cloth around his shoulders. His fingers, though aged and trembling, worked the knot loose with practiced ease. "I am called by many names, beggar, madman, forgotten. But my true name," he pulled at the cloth. "My true name was stolen from memory when my family line was thought to have ended." The rags fell away. Beneath them was a garment of deep indigo cloth, embroidered with symbols that had not been seen in this village for 30 years. Ancient symbols, royal symbols. The crowd gasped as one. "I am Okoro," he said, his voice suddenly strong and clear. "Last son of the lineage of Eziudo, keeper of the sacred heritage, and I came here to answer one question." The gasps turned to shocked silence. Elders fell to their knees. The name Eziudo was legend, a bloodline of chiefs and protectors, keepers of ancient wisdom and hidden wealth, thought vanished when war and famine ravaged the land. "But they are gone," someone whispered. "The Eziudo line died out." Okoro smiled sadly. "Not dead. Hidden. Watching." He turned to face Obiya Yulu, and the crowd saw the resemblance. The same eyes, the same proud jawline, the bearing Obiya Yulu tried to carry. I disguised myself not to beg or shame, but to test. The sacred cloth was blessed by ancestors. It reveals truth. It strips away pretense. He gestured to the magnificent garments beneath the rags. For 30 years, I kept the heritage safe, waiting for the right heir worthy to receive what our fathers built. Obiayulu's face was pale as death. Father, he interrupted gently. I came tonight to see if my son had a heart worthy of inheritance, to see if wealth taught him humility or pride. He paused, and the silence was crushing. The test was simple, he said. Would you show kindness to a stranger in rags? Would you honor an elder? Would you remember where you came from? Obiayulu sobbed completely. His face pressed to the ground. I failed everything. Okoro's eyes shone with tears. Yes, my son, you did. He turned to the crowd. I am keeper of lands, wealth, and knowledge passed through 7 generations. I plan to give it all to my son today, to bless his marriage with the full Eziudo inheritance. Murmurs rippled through guests. Such wealth, such honor. But the ancestors are clear, he continued. Wealth given to a prideful heart becomes a curse. Power in hands that forgot humility destroys rather than builds. He looked at Obiayulu. I cannot give you the inheritance, not yet. Perhaps not ever. Please, Obiayulu begged, crawling forward. Give me another chance. Let me prove I can change. Okoro was silent. Then he said, the ancestors offer one final chance, but it will not be easy. You must rebuild yourself with honor, not money. The crowd held its breath. Return to nothing and learn to be someone with nothing. Only then will you understand what you almost lost. Obiayulu's hand shook as he reached for his father's feet, pressing his forehead against them. Forgive me. Please, father. I will do anything. For a long moment, Okoro said nothing. Then slowly he placed his hand on his son's head. I have never stopped loving you. Even when you walked away, my love followed. But love without wisdom is water poured into sand. He lifted Obiayulu's face. I will not give you wealth. Not yet. But I give you something greater, a chance to become worthy of it. Serve the people you once looked down upon. Live humbly. Obiayulu nodded, tears streaming. I swear it. Okoro turned to Chief Nwosu and his wife. You taught your daughter to value gold over character. You pushed my son to hide his blood. You will leave this ceremony and think deeply about what honor truly means. They tried to protest, but the crowd's angry murmurs silenced them. Ashamed, they departed. Okoro faced Adana.
Child, you passed the test I never gave you. You chose mercy over pride. If you still wish to marry this man, I bless it, but give him time to grow first. Adana nodded, tears on her cheeks. As the feast ended, Okoro whispered, the poorest man is one who abandons the hearts that carried him. Pride destroys, truth reveals, and love endures beyond gold, beyond shame, beyond time itself.